Let's discuss this now with Omar Rahman in Washington, D.C. He's a fellow at the Middle East Council on Global Affairs. Thank you, as always, for your time. How difficult is it going to be for the Israelis to carry out this takeover plan? They've got much of the north, but Gaza City was once the biggest and most populated city in the enclave. What's this operation going to look like?
First of all, thank you for having me. Well, I'm not a military specialist, but Israel has gone in there with lots of troops. They already have 60,000 troops or so on the ground, and they're calling up another 60,000 reservists. We'll see how many people heed that call. Obviously, we've seen huge protests within Israel this past weekend. And so there's a lot of pressure on this government and pressure on people to resist those particular orders. But if they're in there, you have a small guerrilla operation from Hamas and from others who have been resisting and have been able to, kill Israeli soldiers, blow up tanks and that kind of things with IEDs, stuff like that. But, Israel has overwhelming military superiority and, it has no qualms about any type of actions, kills civilians at will, bombs everything in sight. And so, they're able to do what they will. But to hold on to territory for long periods of time takes a lot of troops facing, some element of resistance on the ground.
And it also could take some time, as you say. And this weekend, there were those demonstrations against this taking place. But almost every week for months now, for almost 2 years, we've seen this internal dissent. What does it tell us then about Benjamin Netanyahu's priorities when it comes to listening to his own people, especially when it comes to the lives of the hostages, many of whom are still in Gaza?
Well, there's been a large sustained opposition to carry on this war for quite a long time, and Netanyahu has been able to ignore it. There's no system within Israel or legal in which you can collapse the government. So Netanyahu knows as long as his coalition government is strong and maintains its members, that nothing else can happen, and that he can ignore the kind of popular calls for him to either stop this war or step down or any of that kind of stuff. So he's been able to do that. He's also facing, there's that pressure from within, certainly, and there's also, a little bit of mounting pressure from without, as Israel's allies both voice their concerns and then are interested in taking steps like, recognizing a Palestinian state, which is not something that Netanyahu and his far-right government want to see. But it's happening, in large part as a result of the pressure building in Western states, in Australia and France and England and elsewhere in Germany against their governments for supporting Israel's actions throughout this war and supporting this type of genocide. So that kind of pressure is leading to, those governments to put pressure on the Israelis. So the Netanyahu government is facing, I think, some amount of pressure on both sides, but it's been willing to withstand that because those have been, mostly rhetorical condemnations without taking really substantial action against Israel. And until that happens, this government knows that it can continue to pursue its objectives without having to surrender them.
Omar, what does that sustainable action then actually look like? Because as you've said, there's been plenty of condemnation for many of Israel's ongoing actions. We could see a Palestinian state being recognized by several Western countries just next month at the UN General Assembly. But when it comes to actual action, there's been very little of that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And even recognition of statehood only goes so far. It's important, but it's far from what's necessary to both end the war in Gaza and to end Israel's overall occupation. But to take action, there are many steps that can be taken. Sanctions need to be leveled at Israel by governments. They need to cut off relations, arms embargo, anything to bring this litany of war crimes, this genocide to an end. It's demanded, it's incumbent on the international community, it's incumbent on these states to do it. They're in breach of their own obligations under international law and often their own in domestic laws. The UK, for example, the US, you're not allowed to carry on economic relations or to provide arms to a state that's violating human rights. And there's no doubt about what Israel is doing and its criminal behavior. And so all these states are in breach of their own obligations under their own laws as well as under international law. So they need to move forward and change their action in that way. That will put the kind of pressure on Israel to bring this genocide, to bring these war crimes to an end, and hopefully move towards a much more kind of sustained and wider peace. But that is a long way away, and I think people need to focus on what's happening right now in Gaza.
Thank you very much for your thoughts, Omar Rahman in DC. Thank you.
You're most welcome.